The $40,000 debt. How I fought back against my family. My parents defended my brother's $40,000 debt, tried to access my bank account, and called me selfish for saying no. This is the story of how I fought back. I've been following discussions here for a while, but never felt compelled to share my own story until now. At 35, I desperately need some perspective because my family has finally pushed me past my breaking point. No matter what I do, I'm always cast as the villain. This prolonged, seemingly endless family drama has completely drained me mentally. And emotionally, I built my career from the ground up and currently work as a middle manager at a major Silicon Valley software company. I've worked incredibly hard, enduring countless sleepless nights to earn everything I have: my house, car, and savings. You wouldn't believe the challenging family dynamics I overcame to get to this point. Let me give you some background. Since turning 18, I've been completely self-sufficient, in every sense of the word, financially, emotionally, and intellectually. The way my parents raised my brother and me was, to put it mildly, problematic. Parenting awards. On the surface, we appeared to be the ideal American family, middle class. Living in a nice suburban neighborhood outside Boston with good schools. My mom taught elementary school part-time, and my dad worked in insurance. But beneath that idyllic exterior, there was an unspoken rule that shaped my entire upbringing. I was expected to be the responsible one, the role model, always leading by example. Meanwhile, my younger brother Jason, 27, could seemingly do no wrong. From a young age, the unfairness was painfully obvious. One instance stands out. When Jason was 8 and I was 16, my parents grounded me for a month after I got a B+ on a single chemistry test, claiming I was wasting my potential. That same month, when Jason was caught stealing from our dad's wallet for the third time, they simply said he was going through a phase. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a constant pattern. Every time Jason messed up, and believe me, he made a lot of mistakes, it was brushed aside. "He'll learn eventually," my mother would remark with a dismissive wave of her hand. Or he's just sensitive, which was code for, let's pretend this never happened and hope he figures it out. If I so much as stumbled, it felt like the sky was falling. The pressure was relentless and debilitating. Why aren't you trying harder? You need to set a better example for your brother. Don't you know he looks up to you? I worked part-time at a local coffee shop, volunteered at the library, took all AP classes in high school, and strove for a flawless GPA because universities look for that. Jason, on the other hand, rarely attended class and mostly stayed in the basement playing video games. Yet I somehow still had to try harder. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough. If I brought home straight A's instead of praise, they'd question why I didn't get an A+ in calculus. My mother's first reaction after I was chosen valedictorian was, "I hope this doesn't make your brother feel bad about his grades." This dynamic continued into adulthood. Jason struggled to pass his classes, and everyone would say, "At least you're doing your best, sweetie." Not everyone is cut out for academics. The higher the stakes, the worse it got. Jason eventually dropped out of community college after one semester because it was too stressful. My parents paid his rent for a gap year that turned into 5 years of him finding himself. Meanwhile, I worked 2 part-time jobs to pay for state college, one at a coffee shop in the mornings and waiting tables at night. I still remember. The evening I moved out at 18, I'd saved enough from my part-time work to rent a small studio apartment with a roommate. When I told my dad I was leaving, he said, "Well, you'll need to start paying rent if you're staying here anyway." Yet, they never asked Jason for $1 when he lived at home until he was 25, because job hunting was emotionally draining for him. They even gave him an allowance. They never once offered to cover my living expenses or college tuition. Not that I expected them to, but it still hurt to see them go above and beyond for Jason while I was on my own. I worked multiple jobs, took out student loans, and ate more ramen noodles than I care to remember. Jason, meanwhile, continued living with them until his mid-20s, bouncing from one failing job to another, always with an excuse that it wasn't his fault. He'd say things like, "The manager had it out for me," or "the company's toxic culture wasn't." A good fit for my personality, he never took responsibility, always pointing the finger elsewhere. And by covering up his messes and offering excuses, our parents enabled this behavior at every turn. I worked 2 jobs through college, graduated with honors, and landed an entry-level position at a software company. I worked my way up, putting in long hours and seizing every opportunity for further education and certifications. My parents never offered to help, and I never asked. However, they had no problem asking me for financial assistance whenever Jason needed a little help to get back on his feet. The $40,000 ultimatum now. Fast forward to last week. The fact that my mother called was remarkable in itself. You see, my mom doesn't call to chat. She never calls to say hello, check in, or ask about my life. She calls when she needs something. I'm talking about those calls that start with overly pleasant small talk, as if they're trying to win you over before dropping the real reason. That's exactly what happened last week. How's work? Are you still at that tech company? Have you been eating well? She asked at the beginning. It was so unusual that I knew something was up. My mother doesn't care about my diet. The only thing she knows about my job is that I do something with computers. She couldn't even recall the name of my company when we last spoke, during Thanksgiving 3 months earlier, even though I'd been employed there for the past 5 years. She was trying too hard to sound casual, and the whole conversation felt forced. She asked about my boyfriend. I've been single since my engagement ended last year. Another story where Jason played a significant role in my apartment. I've owned a house for 2 years. She even asked about my cat. I've never had one do. 2 allergies. Every question reminded me how little she truly knows about my life and felt like 1,000 tiny paper cuts. Then she hit me with it. Jason was in trouble again. I wasn't surprised. Jason always seems to find trouble, but I didn't expect this. He had apparently racked up $40,000 in debt, not the kind of debt that can be dismissed as young folly, like credit card debt or student loans.
No.
He had borrowed from some very dubious individuals, and they were now seriously demanding their money back. My mother's voice broke, as if she were about to cry, a tactic I'm sure she believed would make me cave. It had worked countless times before. She wasted no time piling on the guilt. You've done so well for yourself. You've always been a strong one. Jason's not like you. He needs your help. Sensitive. You know how he gets under pressure. As I sat in my home office, trying to process what she'd just said, I looked out the window at the neighborhood I'd worked so hard to afford. $40,000? How could anyone possibly accumulate that much debt? When I asked her how it happened, half anticipating some ludicrous explanation about a botched business venture or a scam he'd fallen for, my mom dismissed it like she was swatting away a bothersome fly. That doesn't matter right now, she said, with the same contemptuous tone that always made my stomach churn. What matters is that he's your brother. Family helps family. We've always taught you that family comes first. For years, they've used that line, family helps family, as an excuse. They said it when they asked me to lend Jason money for his revolutionary cryptocurrency investment, which he lost all of in 2 weeks. They said it after his girlfriend dumped him and he stole my credit card information. They wanted me to let him stay at my house. Every time they needed me to cover for Jason, fix something for him, or clean up a mess he'd made, they said it. And each time, I swallowed my annoyance and did what they asked. I didn't want to be the villain because deep down, that little girl still yearned for her parents' approval, thinking that perhaps this time they would acknowledge my help, my sacrifice, my constant saving of their beloved boy. But $40,000? It wasn't just a favor or a loan. It was a down payment for a home. It was a year of hard work. It was my safety net, my emergency reserve, and my security for the future. This time I couldn't do it. For the first time in my life, I told her no. I apologized. But I was powerless to save Jason from the disaster he had created. The aftermath and my fight for independence, the tone of the conversation shifted instantly. In about 2 seconds, my mother went from pathetic to enraged. It hadn't been so horrifying. The transformation would have been almost remarkable. The gentle, worried mother's voice vanished, replaced by an icy, piercing tone. She started screaming, "You're being selfish," her voice getting louder with each word. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. You're abandoning your family when they need you most." She even mentioned the nuclear option. "Do you want his blood on your hands? He borrowed from some nasty folks. What would happen if he did?" The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost comical. However, her attempt to hold me accountable for Jason's bad decisions, again, was not amusing, as though his choices, errors, and complete lack of accountability were somehow my fault. Then, I ended the call. I couldn't listen anymore. My chest felt constricted, as if someone were sitting on it, and my hands were shaking so much I could barely press the end call button. But behind the familiar burden of familial expectations, the shame and the fear, there was comfort. Relieved that I had stood my ground for once. I've worked too hard to be brought down by the poor decisions of others. I've devoted years to developing my career, becoming self-sufficient, and building a life separate from serving as Jason's safety net. I simply couldn't bear the idea of discarding all of that, of potentially jeopardizing my own financial stability, to enable his recklessness to continue. However, the problem with growing up in a dysfunctional home is that guilt creeps in almost instantly. Even when you know you're making the right decision and are positive you're acting in your own best interests. Even though I know I'm not the bad guy, my family has a way of twisting facts, making me doubt my own judgment, and making me feel that way. And it was the same this time. I can't shake the thought that perhaps I made the wrong choice, even though I said no and no. It was the right one at the moment. Confronting my family seemed like the correct thing to do, but now I'm left wondering if I've made things worse. What if they're right? Could I be being self-centered? What if Jason does suffer as a result of my refusal to assist? The logical side of my brain understands that I have no responsibility for my brother's decisions, or the results of those decisions. However, a part of me that is still that young child begging for her parents' approval continues asking herself, what if? To be honest, I have no idea what will happen next. That call was only the beginning. I was totally unprepared for what transpired next. I suspect that this is not the end, particularly with Jason. My parents have never been good at taking no for an answer. I'm trying to remain strong, though. I'm trying to keep in mind that I have the right to defend my future and myself. As this situation develops, I suspect I'll require additional guidance. I'll provide an update shortly. Update 1. The escalation, first of all. I want to thank everyone who left encouraging comments on my previous post. To be honest, I didn't anticipate such a strong reaction. The past week has seen a sharp increase in tension, and not in a positive way. Do you recall that I sensed this wasn't the end? Yes, I was correct. As soon as I hung up on my mom, the harassment campaign began. Initially, it was just a flurry of text messages, the typical guilt-tripping fare. Then, however, things became considerably more sinister. My bank notified me of unusual behavior last Tuesday. Someone had tried to use what seemed to be stolen personal information to get into my account. I received a direct call from the bank's fraud department. They claimed that a huge transfer attempt using my credentials had been detected by their security system due to the suspicious IP address. The fraud investigator told me that the person who attempted to access my account had my mother's maiden name, my social security number, and even the name of my first pet, all standard security questions. Jason would be the only one with access to all that information. Upon realizing that my own brother would attempt to steal from me, I promptly updated all of my security questions and passwords. This was no longer just about money. This was a completely new kind of betrayal. This is where it becomes even more bizarre, though. One of the few relatives with whom I truly get along, my Aunt Catherine, called me yesterday. It seems that my parents have been giving a totally different account of what happened to everyone in the family. They have portrayed me as some cold-blooded, a monster who is living in luxury while her brother suffers. They claim that I am hoarding my fortune while poor Jason is fighting for his life. My aunt called to hear my side of the story, thankfully not believing it. God bless sensible family. She was startled when I told her about the attempted bank fraud. She also disclosed information that I was unaware of. It seems that Jason had attempted to borrow money from multiple family members in recent months, each time claiming a different reason for his need. He told a wide range of stories. He told our old grandma that he needed money to pay his medical fees. It was for a sure-thing investment opportunity, according to our cousin Mark. Was to launch a modest business, according to our uncle Steve. He informed our parents that he owed money to dangerous people. But none of these allegations fit. But this morning was the real kicker. My dad sent me an email, which was the first time he had spoken to me directly since this whole situation began. It was icy, cunning, and to be honest, a little menacing. This is a portion of his writing. Your actions are forcing us to reconsider your position in this family. Your mother and I have always provided for you, supported your education, and given you every opportunity to succeed. Your current success is a direct result of our sacrifices. If you continue to abandon your brother in his time of need, there will be consequences. Think carefully about your next move. The part about them funding my education made me laugh. My student loan payments are still ongoing. However, the warning was unmistakable. Assist Jason, or risk being cut off from the family, they believe. They can control me by threatening to isolate me, so they are attempting to use familial ties as leverage. They don't seem to realize that I've been essentially cut off from them for years. We have always had a conditional relationship. I have to take care of Jason. I have to play the part they put me in, and I have to accept their perverted definition of family devotion. I have discussed the attempted account hack with the IT security team at my firm. They're assisting me with protecting all of my gadgets and accounts connected to my job. Additionally, I've begun recording every single text, email, and voicemail, even if I find it hard to believe I must gather proof. Against my own family, the most bizarre aspect of it all, Jason's girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, depending on their current situation, sent me a text. Jason has been acting strangely recently, she told me. We've never been close. But she was worried enough to contact me after hearing him make cryptic remarks about getting what's his and teaching people lessons this weekend. I'm going to install security cameras at my house. I may be too cautious, but I'm not taking any chances in the wake of the bank account disaster. I never imagined that I would need to defend myself against my own family, but I suppose that's where we are at the moment. For those who are wondering why I don't just pay the money to make this all go away, $40,000 is only the beginning, even if I wanted to, which I don't. According to my aunt's disclosures of Jason's previous borrowing attempts, his overall debt is likely substantially larger. Helping my brother is no longer the goal of this. It's about supporting a detrimental behavior pattern that must end. Next week, I have an appointment with a financial advisor to go over all of my accounts and implement additional security measures. In order to understand my alternatives in the event that the situation worsens, I'm also thinking of talking to a lawyer about the attempted fraud, not necessarily to file charges. If something important occurs, which is likely to happen shortly. Given the current state of affairs, I'll provide another update. I appreciate you letting me vent, and I want to thank everyone who commented on my previous post and shared similar experiences. Knowing that I'm not the only one coping with this type of dysfunction in my family is comforting. Update 2. Confrontation. An exposure. I made the decision to speak with Jason face-to-face following the attempted bank fraud I detailed in my previous update. The events that followed were startling, and yet completely expected. Jason's residence was my destination yesterday evening. It's a dilapidated establishment in a dubious area of the city. He was unshaven, had heavy circles under his eyes, and was wearing a tattered t-shirt when he eventually opened the door. His initial remarks, "You were patient enough to arrive. No apology for my attempted bank account hack. No justification. For the $40,000 debt, it's as usual, just entitlement." He gave me a disturbing response when I questioned him about the bank fraud. Mom and Dad said that if things became severe enough, you would give in. I was merely expediting the procedure. He said it so nonchalantly, as if he were talking about the weather instead of confessing to a crime. At that point, I became aware of something troubling about his flat. There were several phones and what seemed to be credit card statements with several names on them on his coffee table. He swept them into a drawer before I could get a better look. My stomach fell when I understood that this might be more than simply my bank account. My parents arrived just as I was ready to depart. When I got there, Jason had apparently texted them. They stormed inside his residence as if it were there. Oh, naturally, Mom was crying and Dad was enraged. This led to the most heated family argument we've ever experienced. Dad began by expressing their disappointment with my self-centered actions. Mom said that they had failed as parents because I had shown myself to be so heartless. The worst part is that they actually defended the bank fraud attempt when I brought it up. Mom said he was desperate when you declined to assist. What option did he have? Dad continued. People sometimes make mistakes when they're backed into a corner. What I was hearing was unbelievable. So, if it involved family, is identity theft acceptable? I inquired. How did they react? No matter what, family helps family. I lost it at that point. Years of repressed annoyance were released. I explained to them how their favoritism had impacted me and how Jason became the person he is today as a result of their enabling. They cited concrete examples, such as their refusal to assist me with my college tuition while paying for Jason's unsuccessful attempts, their repeated attempts to coerce me into giving him money, and their persistent manipulation of my emotions. What did Jason say? At least I'm not a stuck-up snob who thinks she's better than everyone else, he grinned. In fact, Mom gave a nod of approval. I came to the important realization that they would not change at that point. Never. Money was no longer the only factor in this. This concerned a family relationship that was essentially poisonous and would never get better. I pulled out my phone and listened to the full recording of our chat. How did they look when they saw that I had proof that they were supporting bank fraud? Priceless. This recording goes straight to the police if anything happens to my accounts again, I declared, and I will file charges this time. Jason, Mom began to complain that I was endangering them. My father referred to me as manipulating. For the first time, Jason appeared concerned as he stood there. Dad took hold of my arm as I was about to depart and said something I will never forget. Never expect to be welcomed in this family again if you walk out that door. I gave him a direct look and said, that sounds more like a promise than a threat before leaving. I had dozens of missed calls and messages when I came home. I blocked their phone numbers. I then opened my laptop and began sending an email to my entire extended family, including screenshots of threatening messages, transcript of the tape discussion, and documentation of the bank fraud attempt. I will no longer serve as the family's scapegoat. I'm tired of being controlled. I will no longer serve as Jason's personal ATM. Above all, I have finished maintaining their secrets. It's likely that this will be my final update. I have a hunch that everyone's situation is going to drastically change soon. I'm concentrating on defending myself right now, which includes researching security systems and speaking with a lawyer about possible restraining orders. Thank you to everyone who has been keeping an eye on this situation and lending support. Your remarks gave me the courage to advocate for myself today. Update 3. The truth. Unveiled in New Beginnings. Everything has changed since my last update, which was a month ago. I made the decision to no longer preserve the family's secrets after the altercation at Jason's place. When I eventually revealed the truth, this is what transpired. Do you recall the email I said I was sending to the extended family? Well, I made the decision to take things a step further. I made a thorough social media post with screenshots of the attempted bank fraud, Jason's own admissions of guilt, and a recording of my parents justifying his behavior as proof. I only wanted the truth to be known. I wasn't attempting to get revenge. The reaction was tremendous. Other victims of Jason's schemes began to come forward within a few hours. According to my cousin Tim, Jason had taken out a $5,000 loan for an unfulfilled business venture. Aunt Beth said that he had persuaded her to co-sign a loan, which she is currently repaying. Even the mystery surrounding my grandmother's missing jewels from last Christmas had a likely suspect all of a sudden. However, Jason's ex-crewmate made the most important disclosure when he revealed how Jason had used his identity to open many credit cards. Being too ashamed to come forward, he believed that no one would take him seriously because of my parents' perfect son. Someone at the business where Jason had just had an interview saw the social media post. His past involvement with financial fraud piqued their curiosity. It goes without saying that he was not hired. My parents, standing in their social group, suffered greatly. They had supported their struggling son for years while presenting themselves as the ideal parents, handling one ungrateful daughter. Everyone was aware of the reality now. After complaining to their churchmates about my selfishness, they began to distance themselves from me all of a sudden. Dad's golf friends were too busy to play every week. Mom attempted to minimize the harm by accusing me of lying, but the facts were clear. They were unable to justify their own recorded comments, the text messages, or the bank records. Their carefully constructed image fell apart. When Jason's current roommate viewed the post, it was the real game changer. When he consented to share his apartment, he was unaware of Jason's past. Jason received an eviction notice within a week. People don't want to live with someone who tries to commit bank fraud, it turns out. According to what I've been told, Jason works 3 jobs to pay off his debt. He is finally being held accountable for his acts, and his credit has been damaged. Surprisingly, my parents have stopped using social media. No more quotes about ungrateful kids or passive-aggressive posts about family values. Everyday life has never been better for me. That job promotion I applied for, I got it. I've been able to concentrate on my professional and personal development without the continual drain of family turmoil and money. Exploitation. What a concept. I'm finally meeting someone who respects and understands boundaries. Mom and Dad no longer discuss me at all, according to the few family members I still communicate with. Put an end to guilt tripping. No more attempts at manipulation. At last, they've realized that sometimes social accountability is the result of acts having repercussions. To everyone who has to deal with toxic family members, sometimes letting the truth speak for itself is more effective than going to court. The wrong people will come out, and the right people will listen. Legal repercussions were not my family's biggest fear. Rather, it was the public discovering who they really were. By speaking up instead of keeping quiet, I not only freed myself from their control, but also gave others the confidence to defend themselves. We appreciate everyone who has supported and followed this adventure. I feel really free for the first time in my life. It's acceptable when the family you were born into isn't the one you need. Now I'm assembling my own network of people that respect integrity, accountability, and sincere concern for others. My last update will be this one. Now that the story is over, I'm prepared to begin a new chapter. Free from guilt, deception, and the never-ending weight of providing for others. And what do you know? No lawsuit ever could make that feel better. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.